Have you ever had one of those moments where a man starts chatting you up and afterward you're left thinking, wait a second, was he flirting with me? You replay the conversation in your head, wondering if you missed something. Maybe he asked what seemed like an innocent question or gave you a compliment that didn't quite land at the time. And now it's bugging you because deep down you wonder, was that his way of showing interest? You're not alone. In fact, you might be surprised to hear this, but around 98% of older women miss the subtle signs men use when they're trying to flirt. Especially as we get older, those signs don't always come in loud or obvious ways. There's no playful punch on the arm, no dramatic pickup line, thank goodness. Instead, it's quiet, casual, and so sneaky that it feels just like regular conversation. But let me tell you something. Men absolutely still flirt with women over 60. And many of them actually prefer women our age because of our confidence, our wisdom, and the fact that we're not playing games. But here's the twist, the way they show interest. It's not what you'd expect. Most men have this one sneaky question they ask when they're testing the waters, and if you don't catch it, the moment can pass without you even realizing it was ever there. So in this video, we're going to talk all about that, how men really show romantic interest as we get older, what they ask when they're trying to flirt, and how to recognize it so you don't miss out on a beautiful connection. And I'll share some real examples and gentle ways to respond that feel natural, even if it's been a while since someone gave you butterflies. Let's start by talking about something we often take for granted, casual conversation. Now, you've probably had men ask you questions at the grocery store, on a walk, maybe at a cafe or waiting room. Things like, do you come here often? Or, have you tried this brand before? And while those might sound completely harmless, almost like small talk, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're invitations. You see, when a man is unsure whether you're open to being approached, he won't risk being too direct. Especially with older women, men tend to be more careful. They don't want to offend you or seem inappropriate. So what do they do instead? They disguise their interest inside ordinary questions. And the number one question that gives them away is this: are you here alone? It might come in different versions. He might say, did you come by yourself today? Or is it just you, or are you meeting someone? But it's all the same message underneath. He wants to know if you're available, not just physically, but emotionally. He's feeling you out gently to see if it's safe to keep talking. Most women hear this question and answer it at face value. Oh yes, just me today. And then silence. You might look away or go back to what you were doing, not realizing that he just opened the door. That question? It was him knocking. Let me give you a quick example. A woman I know, we'll call her Judy, was at a local farmer's market. A man in line behind her asked, did you come here by yourself, or is your husband around somewhere with a cart? She chuckled and said, nope, just me and my reusable bag. Then turned back around. Later, she told me, it felt like he was just being friendly, but I wonder now. And she was right to wonder, because the truth is, most men won't ask that unless they're curious about you. It's not really about whether you're alone in that exact moment. It's about whether you're open to connection. So what do you do when a man asks you that kind of question? Instead of just answering and moving on, try adding something that leaves the door open. For example, you could smile and say, yes, just me today. I enjoy getting out on my own sometimes. How about you? See how that turns it into a two-way conversation? You've answered his question, but also invited him to share. That gives him permission to go a little further if he wants to. Another thing to listen for is when a man asks about your plans. Something like, do you have anything fun going on this weekend? Or are you up to anything special today? It sounds casual, but he's testing the waters again. He's looking for an opportunity to connect and trying to see if your schedule might have room for him someday. Now I know what you might be thinking. At my age, men don't hit on women like me. But let me tell you something with all my heart. Age has nothing to do with desirability. Confidence, warmth, kindness, those are timeless. In fact, many men in their 60s and 70s are specifically looking for women who've lived life, who know who they are, and who won't play games. They're not looking for someone to impress with expensive dinners or flashy lines. They just want a real connection, a spark. And that can start with something as small as a question. I've had women tell me they went years without realizing the number of opportunities they were quietly being offered. It's not because men weren't interested, it's because the signs looked too ordinary. But once you start noticing those signals, you can begin to respond differently. Not with over-the-top flirtation, but with warmth and openness. And that brings me to something really important: your body language. You don't have to bat your eyelashes or giggle like a teenager, but small things like eye contact, a gentle smile, or even a slight tilt of your head can completely change the energy of a moment. Let's say you're sitting on a park bench and a man sits down nearby. He asks, "Do you come here often?" It could be casual, or it could be his way of saying, "I'd like to talk to you if you're open to it." You don't have to give a long answer. But if you smile and reply with, "Yes, I like the peace and quiet here," you've just welcomed him into your world, even for a few minutes. That's how it starts. That's how connection begins. Small, soft moments that grow if you let them. So next time you're out and someone asks you a question that seems a little too curious to be random, pause. Look at how they're standing, listen to their tone, and most of all, listen to how you feel. Does the interaction feel light, warm, like a gentle nudge instead of a shove? That's a clue. That's a door opening. And if you're enjoying this so far, be sure to give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more honest, uplifting conversations like this one. Your support means everything, and it helps more women like you find these moments of encouragement. Now that we've talked about that sneaky question men ask to test the waters and how to respond with openness, let's keep going and explore another unexpected way men show interest. One that happens so naturally you might not even realize it's happening. When a man tries to impress you without it seeming like he's trying at all. Have you ever had a man suddenly tell you a story about something he fixed or some trip he went on, or even how he handled a tricky situation without you even asking? You might have thought, well, that was a bit random, or why is he telling me this? But here's the thing, he's not just chatting, he's showing you something. When men are interested in someone, especially someone they respect, they often go into what I like to call silent brag mode. It's not the loud, look at me kind of boasting. No, it's much subtler than that. They tell you a little story where they come out looking capable, interesting, or even a bit heroic. And they do this not to show off in an obnoxious way, but because they want you to see them. Let me give you an example. A gentleman in his late 60s was having a casual conversation with a woman he'd just met at a bookshop. Out of nowhere, he started talking about how he helped a neighbor fix her fence last weekend. He described how he figured out the problem, what tools he used, how long it took. But the point of the story wasn't really the fence. It was, "Hey, I'm capable. I help people. I'm someone you can rely on." That was his way of saying, "Look, I've still got something to offer." Now, if the woman had simply nodded and moved on, she might have missed what he was really sharing. But she smiled and said, "That was kind of you. Not many people would take the time to do something like that." That one sentence, it lit him up, because she saw him. Men want to be seen. They want to feel like what they do matters, especially when they're trying to impress someone. And when a man is interested, he'll try to show you his best side, often through these quiet, everyday stories. It's not always about money or achievements. Sometimes it's how they talk about their grandkids or how they dealt with a difficult time in their life. That kind of openness is a form of flirting. It's a way of saying, I trust you enough to tell you something meaningful. Now, you might be thinking, but I don't want someone trying to impress me. I just want real connection. And that's fair. But here's the thing. This is how many men try to connect. By sharing what they're proud of, they're inviting you to see them in a more personal way. And when you respond with curiosity or kindness, it gives them the green light to keep going. It's also worth mentioning that these moments don't always happen in person. Sometimes it's on the phone or through a message. A man might send you a picture of his garden or mention a project he's working on. He's not just making conversation, he's hoping you'll notice what kind of man he is. And let me tell you, this becomes especially meaningful later in life, because by the time someone's in their 60s or 70s, they've lived a lot of life. They've had wins and losses. They don't always feel young or desirable anymore, even if they still have a lot of love to give. So when a man shares something he's done or something he cares about, it's his way of saying, I'm still here. I still want to matter to someone. So how do you respond in a way that encourages connection without feeling like you're playing a game? It's simpler than you might think. The next time a man tells you a story like that, pause for a second. Think about the deeper message he might be sending, and then respond not just to the surface of what he said, but to the intention behind it. If he talks about building something, you might say, that sounds like something that took real patience. I admire that. Or if he shares a story about helping someone, you could say, you have a good heart. That's not something you see every day. It doesn't have to be a compliment about how he looks or what he owns. What most men want is to be acknowledged for who they are. And those small words of recognition can open the door to something deeper. Another sign that often goes unnoticed is when a man starts asking about your life, but not in the usual way. Instead of the typical questions like, what do you do or do you live around here, he'll start to get a little more personal. He might ask about your favorite memories, what makes you laugh, or what you enjoy doing on a quiet afternoon. These kinds of questions mean he's trying to connect on an emotional level. And again, it doesn't always register as flirting right away. It can feel like friendly conversation. But the truth is, when a man starts exploring who you are, your values, your past, your joys, that's not random, that's interest. That's his way of building something more meaningful than small talk. So how can you stay open to this without putting pressure on yourself or the moment? Try this. Treat each interaction as if it could mean something, even if it doesn't turn into anything right away. That mindset keeps you curious and relaxed. It lets you enjoy the moment without overthinking it. And remember, just because you're over 60 doesn't mean these things stop happening. In fact, they may become more meaningful than ever, because the connection you find now is likely based on substance, on shared values and mutual respect, not just attraction. I want to encourage you to lean into those small signs. Don't second-guess yourself so much. If a man takes a little extra time to talk to you, if he asks a thoughtful question, if he shares something he's proud of, don't brush it off. It's not always just being nice. Sometimes it's an invitation to something real, and you deserve to feel wanted, seen, and cherished at any stage of life. If this is resonating with you, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll always have a space where you feel supported, heard, and empowered. Let's keep going, because there's another subtle way men try to connect, and it's one many women completely overlook. It's not a question, and it's not a story. It's something much quieter. It's how he lingers. Not with his body, necessarily. I'm not talking about someone hovering awkwardly or making you uncomfortable. I mean the kind of lingering that happens in conversation, in shared silences, in the way his eyes stay on you just a moment longer than usual. It's the pause before he says goodbye. The way he doesn't rush to leave, even if there's nothing else to say. That right there is one of the clearest signs of interest, yet it's the one most women completely miss. Let's say you're chatting with a man at the community center after a yoga class. You've talked about the weather, the class, maybe even a bit about your weekend, but instead of wrapping it up and going on his way, he just stays. He keeps the conversation going, even if it meanders. Maybe he asks one more question or repeats something he's already said, just to hold on to the moment. He might not even realize he's doing it, but the reason he's lingering is because he doesn't want the interaction to end. That's his way of saying, I enjoy your company. I'm drawn to you. Now, here's where it gets tricky. As women, especially as we get older, we're often trained to be polite and not read into things. So we may take that lingering as a man just being chatty or assume he's lonely and wants company. And maybe that's true. But more often than not, there's something else underneath it. It's an energy, a pull. I remember a woman in her 70s telling me about a man she spoke to at her local library. They met during a lecture on travel photography. She said, "We talked for about 10 minutes after the talk ended, and then I started packing up to leave. But he just kept standing there, like he had more to say. But he didn't. It was like he wanted to be invited to stay longer, but didn't want to overstep." When I asked her what she did, she laughed and said, "Well, I didn't want to assume anything, so I just said goodbye and left." That moment stuck with her for weeks, and she wondered if she missed something. It's so common. We think if he was really interested, he'd say something. But here's what you need to know. Men over 60 often carry just as many insecurities as we do, sometimes more. Many of them have been through divorces, heartbreaks, losses. They may not feel confident approaching a woman they admire, so they linger. They hang in the air, hoping you'll notice, hoping you'll give a signal back. That signal can be something as simple as saying, "I've really enjoyed talking with you. Do you come to these events often?" Or even, "It's nice spending time with someone who appreciates these kinds of things." You're not throwing yourself at anyone. You're just acknowledging the moment. And sometimes that's all it takes for him to feel encouraged enough to ask the next question, or to ask if you'd like to talk again sometime. These subtle moments, they're like soft invitations. Nothing forced, nothing awkward. Just two people meeting, connecting, maybe even sparking something beautiful. And that brings me to something else. Don't be afraid to look up. I know that might sound funny, but hear me out. We live in a world now where it's so easy to keep our heads down. Whether it's reading, scrolling on a phone, or even just avoiding eye contact at the store, it becomes a habit. But when you lift your eyes and smile at someone, even just briefly, it sends a powerful message. I'm open. I see you. That moment of connection can open a door. A man may be standing nearby, trying to work up the courage to say something, and when you meet his eyes, you give him permission to approach. I've heard countless stories of women who said the conversation started after they made eye contact, and often it was just a smile that changed everything. You don't need to perform or act different than who you are. But if you're someone who tends to shy away or look down, just try being a little more aware of your presence in the room. You never know who's watching, not in a creepy way, but in that hopeful, quiet way people watch when they're wishing for connection. I once heard a man in his early 70s say, "Sometimes I'll see a woman reading alone in the park or sitting at a cafe, and I want to say something, but I always talk myself out of it. I don't want to bother her." He said that what would help most is simply a kind glance, a small sign that she's not closed off to the world. That's all it takes for him to feel brave enough to start something. So let me ask you, when was the last time you allowed yourself to be seen? Not just physically, but emotionally. To let someone linger a little longer in your space, or to hold eye contact just a second past what feels natural. I know it can feel vulnerable, especially if you've been out of the dating world for a while, or if you've been hurt in the past. But every day is a new chance to connect, to say yes to a conversation. To notice when someone's trying to say, I see you and I like what I see, and I want you to remember something really important here. Just because a man's flirting with you doesn't mean you owe him anything. But recognizing that flirtation and enjoying it when it feels good is a beautiful part of life that never has to stop. You're allowed to be seen. You're allowed to feel desirable. And yes, even after 60, you're absolutely allowed to blush a little when someone shows you attention. So the next time you notice someone lingering near you a little longer than necessary, take a breath, look up, say something kind. You never know what kind of connection you're about to unlock. If you're finding value in this conversation, go ahead and tap that like button and subscribe to the channel. This community is here to lift you up, remind you of your worth, and celebrate every stage of life with you. And now, let's talk about one final way men show interest, a signal that hides in plain sight and one that nearly every woman overlooks. It's not in the words they say or how long they stick around, but in what they remember. Because when a man remembers something small you've said, a detail about your life, a preference, a moment from a previous chat, that's not just a kind gesture. That's interest. That's him paying attention because you've caught his attention. Let me explain what I mean. A woman I know named Ellen, who's 68, shared a sweet story with me recently. She mentioned that a man she occasionally sees at her morning walking group asked her once months ago what kind of tea she liked. She casually replied, "Oh, I'm a chamomile person, calms the nerves." She didn't think anything of it. Then one morning, when the weather was chilly and the group had finished their walk, he handed her a small travel cup and said, "Chamomile, right? Thought this might warm you up." She was stunned, not because it was some grand romantic gesture, but because he listened. He remembered. And that simple act of thoughtfulness hit her right in the heart. That's what we often miss when we think about flirting or romantic interest later in life. It's not about sweeping you off your feet. It's about noticing you, truly seeing you, and taking the time to show it. Men who are genuinely interested in you will bring up little things you've mentioned. They'll ask how your daughter's doing after her surgery, or whether you got that book you were looking forward to. They'll remember that you prefer the corner seat by the window, or that you love old jazz records. These aren't just memory tricks. This is how someone tells you without words, "You matter to me." And so when you notice this happening, don't brush it off. Don't think, "Oh, he's just being polite." Ask yourself, is this someone who's trying to build a connection? Is he paying attention in a way that feels personal, thoughtful, maybe even tender? Now, if you want to encourage more of that, without making things feel heavy or overly serious, all you have to do is reflect it back. Show that you're listening too. If he mentions something he's proud of, or something important in his life, remember it. The next time you talk, follow up. Ask about it. Let him see that you care about the person behind the story. That kind of mutual noticing, that back and forth attention, is where real connection grows. It's where companionship begins, often slowly, gently. And that's the beauty of romance after 60. It doesn't have to move fast. It doesn't need big declarations. It simply needs honesty, kindness, and two people willing to be seen. It's funny, isn't it? We often think the spark has to look like fireworks, but sometimes it's a warm cup of tea, a remembered story, a pause in conversation that doesn't feel awkward, but comfortable. And that brings me to one final thought I want to share with you. If you're waiting for someone to say the perfect thing or make the big move, you might be waiting a long time. Because at our age, most people aren't looking for a whirlwind. They're looking for warmth, for presence, for someone to laugh with, talk to, maybe sit quietly beside without having to say anything at all. So open your heart to those quiet signals, the questions that sound casual but are actually invitations, the stories that show vulnerability, the way he lingers, the small things he remembers. They may not always lead to romance, and that's okay. Sometimes they lead to friendship. Sometimes they lead to a deeper sense of connection with the world around you, but every time you recognize one of those signals, every time you let someone in, even just a little, you affirm something incredibly important, that your story isn't over, that love in all its forms is still available to you, and that you, right now, just as you are worthy of being pursued, not for what you used to be, not for what you could become, but for who you are today. So I want to gently encourage you, the next time someone starts a seemingly random conversation or asks a question that feels just a bit too curious to be casual, pause, smile, and maybe, just maybe, let that door stay open for a moment longer than usual. If today's video has sparked something in you, a memory, a realization, or even just a sense of hope, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Sharing your experiences helps other women feel seen too. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more thoughtful, uplifting content made just for you. Here's to the quiet magic of being seen and the beautiful connections that are still waiting right around the corner.